Hey, thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I was an atheist in college, so when I first encountered the anthropic principle and the intelligent design arguments, I already shifted from non-belief to belief, right? So when I read several of these books, I forget, God the Evidence, like one of them was one of them, it fortified what faith that regenerated in me, I guess you can say. So in that sense, the apologetics of intelligent design kind of fortifies someone who already has faith. So then my question is, like, there was a lot of quotes from biologists, chemists, experts in their field, but where you have one that says something that supports faith, let's be honest, right? You're going to have 100 more that don't, right? And just knowing the statistics of the natural sciences, most of them are atheists. So then what's the gap, right? So they're looking at the same information as these Christian or believing natural scientists, and yet they're coming to total opposite 180-degree conclusions. So in what sense will apologetics, obviously it hasn't worked, for a lot of them. So then what's the gap really? What do you think is the barrier to these unbelieving or unwilling scientists to flip the switch to the other side? Does it make sense what I'm asking?
I think it depends the person. I agree. There are a lot who don't come to the conclusion of intelligent design. Like, the data is there. It's not like they're looking at other data. I think there are a few examples of famous scientists who were staunchly non-theistic, anti-theistic possibly even. One is an example of Alexander Fleming, who later in his life he came to believe in the argument of intelligent design because of the teleological argument. But it's true that there are a lot who don't. I think a lot of that has to do with presuppositions. I think if one comes from a naturalistic perspective, one isn't as inclined to want there to be a God. And that's the interesting thing about the use of apologetics. You have to understand that everybody comes into the conversation from a different background. Someone who has a high level of skepticism is going to require a lot more evidence than someone who has a very low level skepticism. If you grew up in the church, maybe you have very low level skepticism, maybe you don't require any evidence at all. And I don't know that that's super healthy, because then you could end up believing a lie and you would never know it. But I think to the other extreme, maybe you have an unreasonable amount of skepticism that there's no amount of evidence that could ever persuade you. I think some of these guys are perhaps too smart for their own good. I think there might be a pride issue there, that to change your entire worldview, to some extent, is to take a position of humility. And like many of these guys are in places of prestige, that they're the authorities. So what happens if they all of a sudden say, I've actually been wrong for the past 30 years. Maybe I'm going to change my entire outlook on life. So I think that might be one reason that's uncommon. But I think just for you guys as an application, realize that everybody comes into the discussion of reasons for what they believe, maybe expecting a different level of evidence. Some are going to be reasonable, some are going to be unreasonable. But your job is just to share what you know, give the reason for what you believe.